Howdy folks, hope you all had a great weekend. I certainly did, and that's one of the reasons why you're not really getting a proper episode of Mingles with Jingles today, because I spent the weekend at MCM London Comic Con. And I really enjoyed myself, although with a certain... I'll get onto that in a moment. But of course, every time I come back from a weekend away at a con, I'm exhausted and I just don't have the time to do a proper episode of Mingles with Jingles. So this is not a proper episode of Mingles with Jingles, it's more an image dump of all of the pictures that I took while I was at Comic-Con, and a little chat about how the weekend went. So the first couple of pictures, because I went up with Eddie, he was driving, and every time Eddie and I have driven up to London before, I think this is mostly down to his old sat-nav, or perhaps he was just selecting the shortest or the most direct route, but it always took us right through central London, through two notorious traffic black spots in central London, Tower Bridge and Elephant and Castle. And Eddie hates driving in London because driving in London sucks. But this time around, we relied on Google Maps. And Google Maps said, oh no, you don't want to be driving through central London on a weekend. What is wrong with you? It took us around the South M25 and then up through Greenwich, through the Blackwall Tunnel. And it added, I don't know, maybe 15 to 20 extra miles to the journey, but we still got there faster, and it was a way less stressful drive because it just avoided all of the traffic snarl-ups until we hit the Blackwall Tunnel. So, you know, now we know for next time. And next time will be London Film and Comic-Con, which I think is at the beginning of July, and I'll be trying out my Moff Gideon outfit for that. For those of you who have no idea who that is, it was the bad guy from The Mandalorian, played by Giancarlo Esposito, who was the bad guy in Breaking Bad, amongst many, many other things. This time around, I was in my Expanse Belter outfit, which is easily the most comfortable costume I've ever worn, even more comfortable than my Gandalf outfit, because it's basically just a jumpsuit with some badges sewn onto it. But it was kind of disappointing. I mean, not the costume, the fact that hardly anybody seemed to recognise that I was actually in costume. I think only 3 people came up and shouted out, "Oh, The Expanse," which is surprising because it's an amazingly popular TV show and the costume options for it are relatively simple. But I think I'm the only person that I have ever seen doing an Expanse cosplay. So, yeah. That's the funny thing about costumes at these shows. They tend to, well, it's hard to tell whenever something's going to be popular and when it isn't. I mean, a couple of years ago, there would be 50 people in Attack on Titan outfits. And I think this weekend I saw 3. Lord of the Rings isn't as popular as it used to be either. I saw a very, very good Boromir, a great Aragorn, and a couple of Gandalfs, and that was about it. A couple of years ago, I turned up in my Gandalf outfit, I think right before COVID, the last time I went to one of these cons. And there were dozens of people in Lord of the Rings outfits. This time, very few. Same with Game of Thrones. 2-3 years ago, you couldn't walk 10 yards without bumping into half a dozen Jon Snows and Khaleesi's. This year, again, I probably saw maybe 2 or 3 different people in a Game of Thrones outfit. There didn't really seem to be any one popular theme this year, but I saw people in all kinds of different things that I hadn't seen before. Well, with the exception of all of the anime costumes, most of which I didn't recognise. But there's always hundreds of people there in anime costumes. And that was the other thing. Because while I definitely enjoyed my time at MCM London this weekend, it's a pale shadow of the show that it used to be. And I'm speaking more about actually inside the expo centre rather than outside mingling with all of the cosplayers, because that was just as good as it's always been. But inside, they only had 2 exhibition halls. They used to have 4, and one of those exhibition halls was nothing but anime and Japanese stuff. And about a third of the other one was nothing but anime and Japanese stuff. So if you're not into anime and Japanese stuff, you probably don't want to waste your time actually going into the exhibition centre when you go to MCM London Comic Con. But the cosplayers, as always, were just fantastic. And as always, I was astonished by the imagination that went into some of the costumes. Oh, while we're on the subject of the cosplayers, there's something that's been pissing me off for a couple of years now. And it's to do with the 501st Legion. So, Star Wars cosplayers. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't really have anything against the 501st Legion. And I totally understand why it is that they do the thing that really pisses me off. But it still really pisses me off. So a couple of years back, and this isn't the only time it's happened, I was in my Imperial officer's outfit, which is not up to the same standard as a 501st Legion Imperial officer's outfit, and this is kind of the point. Now, if you're turning up at one of these shows in a Star Wars costume, it's probably because you love Star Wars. And when the 501st Legion put on their display, and all of their stuff is immaculate, by the way, it has to be, otherwise you don't get into the 501st Legion. But you're probably going to want to go and take a look at their display because their stuff is so good. But if you do turn up and go anywhere near the 501st Legion display, and you're in a Star Wars costume, and you're not a member of the 501st Legion, they'll walk up to you and tell you to leave, which is incredibly rude, not least of which because they have no right to do that. They're just an exhibitor, the same as everybody else at Comic-Con. They don't actually run Comic-Con. And I know why they do it, obviously. It's because they don't want anybody else turning up, seeing you standing at their display in your shitty Star Wars costume and thinking, wow, that's not very good. And tarnishing their reputation by people thinking that you're a member of their display group when you just happen to be somebody who is also wearing a Star Wars costume standing next to their display. So I understand why they do it, but it's still incredibly fucking rude. I mean, I suppose they're perfectly entitled to politely ask you to get away from their display, but they don't. They walk up to you and order you to leave their display. At the same time, you are just as equally entitled to tell them to go and kiss your ass because you're a paying customer, the same as everybody else who they're not ordering to get away from their display. I don't know. You know, it just seems unnecessary, that's all. I mean, like I said, I understand why they do it, and to a degree I probably sympathise. I mean, their costumes are absolutely screen-perfect, immaculate. And they don't want somebody turning up in a cheap polyester knockoff costume standing next to them and everybody thinking, oh, wow, that's kind of shit. I thought these guys were good. But at the same time, if you're going to turn up at something like Comic-Con and put on a display of Star Wars costumes and then start getting bitchy when other Star Wars fans turn up to admire your costumes, I don't think you've really grasped how this whole comic convention thing works. Oh, speaking of people getting wound up, because I know that somebody's gotten triggered already by the format of the photographs that you're seeing running in the background of this video. Yes, I know they're portrait. Yes, I know anybody over the age of 40 is supposed to take pictures of everything in landscape, and I normally do, but these pictures were taken for Instagram. And due to the way Instagram crops pictures, this is just the best way of taking pictures. You don't have to like it, it's just the way it is. Well, anyway, I hope you've been enjoying the pictures, by the way, and thank you to everybody who did come up and say hello at Comic-Con. And I'm going to finish this episode off with a story that was related to me by somebody at Comic-Con on the second day, the Saturday. So Eddie and I were wandering around in costume on the Saturday, and somebody recognised us and came over to say hello, and we spent a good 5-10 minutes having a chat. And they told us something that had happened on the day before. So before I tell you what it was that he told us, I have to tell you what happened to Eddie and I the day before. It's probably not surprising with the new Doctor Strange movie out, but there were a lot of people in Doctor Strange outfits over the course of the weekend. And after Eddie and I on the Friday had seen maybe our 7th or 8th Doctor Strange, Eddie prodded me and said, wow, look at that Doctor Strange over there. And we turned around and looked up the steps coming out the exhibition hall. At the top of the steps was quite probably the single best Doctor Strange cosplay we had ever seen. It wasn't just that the costume was good, he was the spitting image of Benedict Cumberbatch. But at that point, this must have been the 7th or 8th or 9th Doctor Strange costume that we'd seen, and I'd already taken pictures of some, and we both said, yeah, that's really good, and then just moved on and didn't give it a second thought. Well, the next day, somebody recognised us and we stopped and had a good chat for a good 5-10 minutes. And then he said, oh, by the way, you'll never guess what happened yesterday. No, do tell. Benedict Cumberbatch was here. cosplaying as Doctor Strange. We'd actually seen Benedict Cumberbatch in his Doctor Strange costume from the movie and just gone, yeah, that's really good. Well, anyway, and moved on without realising that it was actually him. So that was a bit of a missed opportunity. But hey, what are you going to do? Apparently Daniel Radcliffe, the actor who played Harry Potter, does this a lot as well. He turns up a lot of these conventions in a Spider-Man outfit, so nobody knows who he is. But if an especially small child comes over and shouts, Spider-Man, Spider-Man, he'll whip the mask off to really confuse the shit out of the kid. It's like, wait a minute, Harry Potter is Spider-Man? Well, anyway, that's it for this week's episode of Not Actually Mingles with Jingles. To all of the people who did recognise myself and Eddie and came over to have a chat, it was lovely to meet you. To anybody who was looking for me and didn't spot me in the crowd, I'm really sorry, but hey, maybe next time. Next time we'll be at London Film and Comic Con at the Olympia Centre in July, where I'll be in a Moff Gideon outfit, so hopefully I'll be a bit easier to spot. In the meantime, as always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.